Next item that we wanted to update you about was the environmental assessment that's being done for Highway 138. In this case, John McDonald is your representative on the Citizen Advisory Committee, and what we're here for tonight is to kind of give you an overview of where things are right now and have you provide input to Commissioner McDonald so that he can pass that on to the Citizen Advisory Committee when they hold their next meeting, which is now scheduled for February 7th. And I have every assurance it will stay on that date. Just as a brief reminder, what is happening is that a planning study was completed in May of 2008. From that, there were some alternatives that were identified, and the next step before you can do any process is to do an environmental evaluation, and that evaluation has to be done per NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. And that act indicates that you have to assess alternatives, and the point is to have a project that is sustainable and balances essential needs of the present and future generations. The environmental assessment will look at the alternatives and identify potential impacts to the social and the natural environment and identify actions that can mitigate any impacts that are identified. The public involvement process is a very important process of NEPA. So in addition to the Citizen Advisory Committee's meetings, there will also be a number of public workshops that are held throughout the process, as well as there will be an opportunity for public comment period as required under NEPA. And whatever project is ultimately identified through the NEPA process, it is what the Federal Highway Administration relies on when they make their decision on funding federal projects. The document will start out with a purpose and need statement, and a purpose and need statement was developed as a part of the planning study, and what that does is it describes the underlying transportation issues. It's used to identify key factors for developing the alternatives. It's a document that can change throughout the process, and it's ultimately comes up with identifying a project that meets that purpose and needs. You have in your packet before you, and I'm not going to read this, this is this purpose statement that was identified through the 2008 Planning Solution Study. The consulting team that's working on this project right now is working on refining this statement, and we'll be bringing that back to the next CAC for edits. And with that, there were needs that were developed and identified, and they are also based on whatever refinement is done in the purpose statement. We'll be refining the need statements. Again, you have these in your packet. And there were 4 needs that were identified, but we're expecting that those will alter and change. The goals and objectives are the issue that the CAC really is focusing on right now. And the goals and objectives are used in comparing the different alternatives to see which ones of those meets the needs and the purposes that have been identified, that they are statements that talk about the concerns that are involved. They give you measurable items that you can look at when you're looking at which projects meets the goals. In your packet, there are 5 goals that have been identified, and if you have comments on these that you can share this evening, we'll ask you to do that. If not, what we'll ask is that between now and John's next meeting on the 17th, if you have any comments, if you can submit those in writing to him so that he can share those come that evening. And I'm not going to go through and read all of these. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to. The area that's being studied is shown on this slide, and I know it's really hard to see, but it does include, it starts almost at where the bridge starts going over the river on Washington and Oak. It goes out to Fullerton. It encompasses to Mosier, and up here is where Winchester comes out on Stevens Street. And 138, the green, which is hard to see on this slide, comes up Stevens and then out Diamond Lake Boulevard is the 138 corridor. And the environmental study will focus on potential impacts of the projects in this study area.